Hello and welcome. I'm Harmony Quaker, and this is the channel for the Institute for Spiritual Alignment, where we offer ongoing learning opportunities for therapists, coaches, and anyone who's passionate about bridging the divide between traditional psychotherapy and counseling and spiritual transformation. In this video, we are going to be exploring how to shift a relationship paradigm. A relationship paradigm is a patterned way of engaging in a relationship based off of a model of how we think a relationship should be. And when we are engaging in a relationship paradigm that does not feel aligned with the truth of who we are, that does not feel like a resource in our life that supports our well-being, then it is time to create a new relationship paradigm. Relationships are intended to be a resource in our life, not a drain. Before we dive into that, I want to let you know that I wrote a book for you. Align Living and Loving from the True Self is a comprehensive map of how to come back home to the truth of who you are and how to engage in relationships from that deeply connected place within yourself. Align is available on Amazon and barnesandnoble.com. I also created these self-guided alignment cards for you. Each card has a wisdom teaching and a sentence stem to support you in living and loving from your true self. These are available only on my website, thespirituallyaligned.com. And these are a wonderful resource for aligning with yourself and engaging in the world from your true self. So, as we begin, I want to share a personal story with you about a time in my life when I shifted a relationship paradigm. And this is in the relationship with my father. So, when I was growing up, I was shaped and conditioned to have a very accommodating, pleasing personality where I made other people more important than me. And I didn't really share myself with the people in my life. I hid beneath layers and layers of shame. And so in my early 20s, when I left my hometown, my father asked me to call him every Sunday so that he could know what was going on in my life. He wanted to know the logistics of how I was living my life. And this was how he wanted to stay connected with me. And I felt so grateful, so surprised, and so willing to call him every Sunday. And this was really the beginning of us creating a new relationship together because we never talked on the phone weekly. And so I started calling him every Sunday, and I would tell him about what I did that week, about what gym I went to, who I spoke to, and just sort of the logistics of my life. And he would tell me the same about his life. And over a couple of years, I realized that these conversations weren't feeling connected to me. I didn't feel rejuvenated. I didn't feel like this was a resource in my life. I felt like it was a drain. It became an obligation. And I wanted to discover what was happening inside of me that was causing me to feel this way as I had a conversation with my father. And so it had been about 10 years since we had started this conversation every Sunday. And I told him that I needed to take a break. And so I took a month off from talking to him. And when I came back, I let him know that I realized that I was holding a lot of pain from my childhood about ways in which I was negatively impacted by him. And that in order to really show up for these conversations, that I wanted to be known by him in my experience. And it's important to note here that I wasn't coming to him with this to blame him or to make him feel bad. I wasn't coming to him with resentment or anger. I was bringing this to him because I knew that if I showed myself to him, that if I was vulnerable about how I had been impacted by his unconscious actions, that I would feel closer to him. And I wanted that. I wanted to feel connected to him. And he wanted that too, because he said yes, he wanted to know what it was that I was holding and he wanted to know my pain. So I shared with him how he had impacted me, how I had been shaped in relationship to him, and the pain that I was holding. And he responded in a way that was kind. He apologized. But I got off that phone call feeling unsatisfied. I was needing more from him. I was needing more empathy. I was really needing to know that he heard what it was that I was saying. So I came back the following week and I let him know that I had shared something very vulnerable with him the week before and that I was wanting him to reflect what it was that I had said so that I could know that he really heard me. And he did his best at reflecting and being empathetic with me. And it gave me the opportunity to refine what I had said, to underscore certain things, and to clarify what I was really wanting him to know. And this was really the beginning of us collaborating to find a new relationship paradigm, to find a new model of what it meant to be a father-daughter in connection with one another. And this was about 10 years ago now. And over the past decade, he and I have cultivated the deepest, most respectful, responsive, loving, joyful relationship I could have even ever imagined. It's truly beyond what my mind could have conceived as possible for my relationship with my father. And when people either hear me talking to my dad or see us interact with one another, the thing that they always say to me is, I wish that I could have that relationship with my parent. I know that they would never be able to meet me in that deep way that your father meets you. And I believe that this is the number one way that people set an ego trap for themselves that keep them stuck in relationship paradigms that don't feel good to them. They make up a story about another person's capacity, and it prevents them from increasing their own capacity to show up differently in service of a new relationship paradigm. In this example with my father, I very easily could have made up a story about him that he didn't have the emotional capacity to meet me in the depth that I was wanting, that he didn't have the interest, that it was my job to be accommodating and pleasing. I very easily could have fallen into that trap. And in all honesty, I probably did for many years. It's probably what kept me from doing it for so long. But I didn't let my story about him keep me from being courageous, from being vulnerable, from showing myself to him and asking him to meet me in the way that I was wanting to be met. And so, in this creating a new relationship paradigm, there are two most common ways that people keep themselves stuck in old paradigms. And one is the way that I just said. People create a story about another person's capacity, and they allow that story about another person's capacity inhibit them from showing up with vulnerability, with authenticity. And so if you find yourself making up a story about another person and their capacity, it could be a person in an existing relationship or even a person in a relationship that you are hoping to have. I'll never find a partner who can meet me in that deep way, or I'll never be able to have that deep conversation with my parents. Those are stories that prevent you from actually showing up in a way that contributes to the shift in the pattern to create a new relationship paradigm. The second most common way that people prevent themselves from creating a new relationship paradigm is unconsciously trying to find resolution from the past in the current relationship dynamic. And so, what that means is that when we have unfinished business from the past that contribute to our own patterned ways of being in relationship, unconsciously, we are trying to resolve that old unfinished business right now in this relationship by unconsciously hoping that the other person will meet us in a new way so that we don't feel this pain of our unfinished business or this wound from the past. When we are unconsciously trying to resolve the past now, we are actually preventing ourselves from being present to what is available to us in this moment. In this example with my father, I was unconsciously wanting to find resolution from the past when I didn't get his attunement and his connection. I could have quietly waited, but instead, what I did was I asked specifically for what I was wanting. Because as a mature, wise woman, I have that ability to ask for what I want. And in his sovereignty, he can choose to try to give that to me or to give me something else or to say no. This is how relationship happens, how healthy relationship encounters happen. I know what I want, you know what I want, and we navigate that space between our two desires. Desires are where connection happens. So, when we are unconsciously trying to find resolution from the past in our current relationships, we are in all likelihood engaging in that relationship from a younger part of ourselves, from our attachment wound, and we're looking to the person in our life to be a reparative figure. If we're not asking for what we want, though, the setup is that we never have resolution. We long for resolution. We try to point out to the other person what they're doing wrong so that we can get resolution. But the solution actually doesn't lie in the other person. The solution rests within ourselves by listening to ourselves deeply, by honoring what it is that we want, by holding ourselves in such a way that contributes to a new relationship paradigm. So there are 5 things that I'd like you to consider as you attempt to create a new relationship paradigm in your life. The first, identify your own pattern that contributes to the relationship paradigm. As I was saying before, it's common for the mind to look to the other people and assess their pattern, their capacity, what they do to contribute to a relationship that does not feel satisfying. But what is it that you are doing that contributes to this relationship paradigm staying as it is? What is your contribution to this pattern? Once you can understand your contribution, you can start to shift the relationship paradigm from what you have control over, which is how you show up. You don't have control over how they show up, but you do have control over how you show up. So identifying your own pattern is the number one way to shift a relationship paradigm. The second one is to become aware of your narratives of other people. As I was saying before, paying attention to what you think other people's capacity is an ego trap that keeps you stuck in not showing up differently. So when you have narratives about other people, just recognize that they're just stories that you have about other people. And you might even want to see if that story actually can also be said about you, because oftentimes those stories are a projection and we're disowning something within ourselves and assigning it to somebody else. So pay attention to that stories and bring that attention back to you, because again, the solution rests within you. The third thing is to get clear on what you are available for. And this is really important because if I come to somebody with my vulnerable truth and my vulnerable desire, and they don't want to hear what is happening for me, I get to decide if I'm available for a relationship where somebody doesn't want to know what is happening for me. And so when I brought my pain to my dad and wanting to be known to my dad, him saying yes let me know that he cared about me, that connection was important to him too. And so to me, this means this is a relationship that I want to invest in. And this is true for all of our relationships. When a dynamic is happening in the paradigm that does not feel sustainable, loving, caring, connecting, we get to decide if we are available to continue to show up for that relationship dynamic. And so, as we look to see what it is that we are contributing to the pattern, as we get clear on the stories that we have about other people, we also can be clear in those moments if what is actually happening is something that we are willing to continue to engage in without fighting reality. It's very common for people to fight reality and to try to change what's happening out here in the relationship. And this just keeps the relationship being a drain. And so by looking within and seeing what's happening inside of yourself, you can actually move forward from a deeply connected place within yourself, which leads me to number 4, to the fourth thing that I'd like to invite you to consider, which is how can you bring the quality that you're wanting into the relationship paradigm? So this is not to say that if you're wanting to feel heard in the relationship, that you spend more time listening to the other person. That just keeps the dynamic entanglement happening over and over and over again. If you want to be heard in your relationship, listen to yourself. The moment you listen to yourself and honor your voice and your truth, the relationship paradigm begins to shift because now you do feel heard. And when you're listening to yourself, how you engage in your relationship is very different than if you aren't listening to yourself, if you're betraying yourself, if you're quieting your own voice. If you're truly listening to yourself, you are making room for what it is that you want to say. And you know that what you're saying is valid, that your desire is valid, that your pain deserves attention and love. And that starts to shift the entire relationship. This is also true for if you're wanting more love in your relationship. Love yourself more and bring that quality of love with you. If you're wanting more connection in your relationship, be more connected with yourself and bring that deep connection with you. Whatever it is that you want in the relationship, bring it by way of giving it to yourself first and moving from that place within yourself. And then lastly, the fifth one is to be very intentional about the place within yourself from which you speak or act in your relationship. This is so important. We can say something from our pain and from our attachment wound, and those same words will have a completely different impact if we are speaking from our true self. So if we are experiencing pain and we find ourselves speaking from our pain, and when we speak from our pain, we typically cause more pain and perpetuate pain, we have a beautiful opportunity to shift our awareness, find our way into our most awake resource self, and speak on behalf of our pain. Speaking on behalf of our pain is very different from speaking from our pain. And this is true in this example that I gave you with my dad and I. I wasn't coming at him from my pain. I wasn't discharging my pain onto him. I was coming to him from my awake resource self, letting him know about my pain. So speaking on behalf of my pain. I wasn't spiritually bypassing it. I wasn't cognitively bypassing it. I was holding myself with love and care and showing myself to him and being available to receive that same quality and love and care from him and to ask for what I wanted until I got it. And this this last piece of knowing where you are moving from can be so helpful in every area of your life, in every relationship that you have. If you are in your wounding, if you're in your ego, if you're in your conditioned patterns, which we all have, there's no shame in it. We all fall asleep to our true self. But if we are in those patterns, we have a sacred opportunity to shift into our more awake resource self, give ourselves what it is that we need and what we want, shower ourselves with love and acceptance and connection and belonging, and then speak on behalf of ourselves in all of our relationships. The beautiful thing about doing this work is that when we shift a relationship paradigm with one person, all of our relationships shift. When we increase our capacity to stay aligned and connected with ourselves in one relationship outside of ourselves, in the world around us, all of our relationships have a ripple of feeling that new relationship paradigm because we are not the same. And this is why this work is so internal. So I hope that you found value in this video. If you are really committed to finding a new relationship paradigm, I want to invite you to come to my website, thespirituallyaligned.com, and look at my course, Spiritually Aligned Relationships. This course is so empowering and detailed to support you in finding a new way to cultivate a relationship paradigm that really feels authentic and congruent with the truth of who you are. So thank you so much for listening today. I'm wishing you so much beauty and love and ease and joy in all of your relationships, including your relationship with yourself.